Hello, Dave here from Creative Guitar Lounge. Wanted to do a video today about buying your first guitar, or at least the first time you've bought a guitar. Maybe someone gave you one. It's quite often how a lot of us get started, and maybe it left a lot to be desired. So hopefully this can give you some ideas about some of the very, very basic but essential things to look for, so that that experience of buying that first guitar is something that stays with you for a long time, and you know you've made the right choice. So we'll talk briefly about both acoustic and electric guitars. I would hazard a guess that most people, including myself, would start with an acoustic guitar. But there are a lot of things in common. They both have necks and frets and bodies. Obviously electric guitars are kind of a different beast because they've got all these other electronics and they don't have a sound hole. They tend to be solid bodied. They have pickups and all manner of other things. But the things that they do have in common are that they have a neck, which is obviously one of the very most important things on any guitar. And what you want to look for, well, let's go right back to the very beginning. You're going to start with the two things that I would suggest are the first kind of criteria that you have, and that will be budget, what you can afford, and the kind of guitar that you're attracted to, because there are so many fantastic looking guitars out there, and a certain style is going to appeal to you more than others. So I would start with those two criteria and then start to narrow it down with the information I'm going to share with you here. I'll also put a link in the description to a blog post on my website that I've written about this in a lot of detail that you might want to, bookmark and refer to if it's useful. So let's say you've chosen this Yamaha 310, which is a very, very affordable acoustic guitar, and I would say probably a really pretty good choice for a first guitar. I bought this one recently, second hand in fact, just to use for a certain type of stringing that I've talked about before. Not important, but the things to look at, first of all, look down the neck as if you were sighting along a rifle. Yeah, and what you're looking for is to make sure of a couple of things. Make sure that all these frets line up. So you look at it at a very slight angle, make sure they line up and aren't squint, none of them are sticking out. Can be done, these kind of things can often be sorted, but you don't really want to do that. You want to have as playable an instrument as you possibly get right off the bat. So that's what you first make do, and that makes you see if there are any twists this way in the neck, or any, like I say, raised frets or shallow frets. That's the first thing. When you're doing that, you can also see if the neck is bent slightly along its length. Yeah, like that. Either way. And again, in some cases, that's something that can be adjusted. They have some guitars, not all, have a metal truss rod which goes through just for support, and in some guitars that can be adjusted. But again, it's kind of an expert job. It's not something you want to really have to do if you can possibly avoid it. So just find a nice straight neck that obviously looks pretty straight that way and that way. Yeah, pretty easy to do just by sighting along it. The next thing is just to see how it feels in your hand, because both electrics and acoustic guitars, they all have different profile necks, and that means they're different in terms of how wide they are and also how they're contoured around the back. They're obviously curved, but some of them it can be a deeper curve than others, some can be quite shallow, and depending on the kind of shape of hand you have, one is going to be more comfortable than another. So there's a couple of basics, probably the most basic thing. So whether you like the look of it, the price, start with those, look at a range of those guitars that you like, check that the necks and everything are straight on them, particularly with acoustics, because there's not an awful lot that you can do with them. The next thing that is very important for you, again this is a feel thing, is what's called the action. You're probably familiar with this, don't want to patronise you if you are, but if you aren't, that is just a term to describe the height the strings are from the frets or the neck of the guitar. And obviously the higher that is, the more difficult that is to play. But the lower it is, if it's too low, then the strings can buzz on the frets. So you want a sort of happy medium. And again, this is going to be influenced a lot by the kind of music that you want to play. If you want to get yourself to the stage where you're shredding like a heavy metal, really fast arpeggios and really fast playing, lead playing, you kind of do want a pretty low action. as low as you can without the frets kind of buzzing. So just to give you a comparison, most acoustic guitars, it's quite difficult to adjust that action, so you want to just find one right off the bat again that is perfect for you, that fits your hand and has a nice action that you can play with. There's a lot more that you can do with electric guitars. So I actually recorded a little video just with close-ups of these earlier on, so let's have a look at that now just to give you exactly what you can and can't do with both. This is a Les Paul Tune-O-Matic style bridge where, as you can see, the strings go over these little saddles, and they're adjustable in two different dimensions. You've got a kind of knurled knob on either end of where the strings go over the saddles, and you can raise that up and down, so you can kind of tilt towards the bass or the treble end of the strings to some extent, and you can also move the individual saddles backwards and forwards inside there, and that's really to adjust the intonation of the guitar, the difference between the strings when they're open and say when you play them at the 12th fret, because sometimes there can be a difference in there caused by different subtensions, and basically this measurement from the nut where the string reaches the top of the guitar at the top of the neck to where it reaches the bridge here, so those can be adjusted. You can also adjust this kind of tailpiece to some extent up or down to give you a little bit of adjustment again on the tension. And on a Stratocaster you have a kind of a similar setup where you again have these individual saddles, but in this case they actually go right through the body of the guitar after going over the saddle, and that attaches to the, if there's a tremolo fitted, that attaches to the block underneath, where the tremolo can move that entire bridge up and down to give you that effect. So you can lift these little saddles individually to adjust individual action on individual strings with these two little Allen key knobs there. And again, like the Les Paul, if you want to adjust the intonation, you can use these screws on the bottom to move the saddles up and down. So here's a close-up of a acoustic guitar bridge, and as you can see, there's not really anything you can adjust here. We've got this plastic or bone or whatever it's made of long section here which the strings go over, and in this one it's actually got a kind of stepped setup to it. Most of them it's really just a plain blank, if you like, piece of material, and the only way you can actually adjust that is to remove it and either sand it down at the bottom if you want to drop the action at that end, or put some kind of a shim in if you want to for some reason raise that. So it's not really something I would recommend you tackle yourself, but it just demonstrates the difference between electrics and acoustics. But most guitars, although you can now get some form of an adjustable nut, in most cases guitars just have a one piece plastic or bone or ivory or whatever kind of modern composite material that happens to be made of. It's just again a strip of that with slots in it for the strings to pass through. So again, you can't really do very much with that. You can file these slots deeper if you want to, or you can take the strings off and remove that whole piece and sand it down from the bottom to make it lower if you need to, or again put a shim in there if you need to make it higher. Again, I would say these are jobs for experienced luthiers, or at least people who've been doing this for quite some time, because you need specialist files and things apart from anything else, apart from a good eye and some skills to do that. So guys, I hope you've found that useful. Like I say, I've put a link to a blog post I did with a sort of a detailed version of this on my website that you can have a look at if you follow that link. If you have found this useful, please let me know, comment, subscribe and like, and if you hit the little notifications bell there, you'll get a notification every time I release a new video. I've relaunched the channel fairly recently, and I'm really kind of going for it. I've got a course almost finished which is aimed at just beyond beginners. So if you subscribe here, visit my website, you can sign up for a newsletter there and get a free video series of me with a few coffee time riffs, quick riffs and tips and little things you can learn really quickly. So if that's been of interest, do those things, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye for now.